My stepmom lied that I stole the car. Dad kicked me out while I was bedridden. Now they want me at their vow renewal. So, about 2 years ago, I got into a really bad car accident. I was rear-ended by a truck, and the guy driving it turned out to be drunk. It hit me hard, literally and figuratively, because I ended up completely bedridden for 3 months after that. I couldn't move a single muscle, no matter how hard I tried. Every inch of my body ached, and I was basically wrecked. But as rough as that was, what really crushed me was what happened next. My dad kicked me out of the house anyway. I was 18 at the time, just a few days away from my driving test, and I'd taken the car out to practice. I hadn't gone far, just around the neighborhood. Before I left, I made sure to ask my stepmom for permission because my dad had always been clear. I needed approval from at least one parent before taking the car out. Since he was at work that day, I went to her, and she gave me the green light. But later, after the accident, she completely twisted the story. She told my dad that I'd taken the car without asking, just to go show off to my friends or whatever. According to her, I snuck out behind her back, trying to look cool. My dad didn't even bother to hear me out, he just believed her version and kicked me out without a second thought. Now, my stepmom had always been kind of distant with me, but I never imagined she'd go so far as to lie to my dad and get me thrown out. That felt like a betrayal I wasn't ready for. She'd been around since I was 4 years old, ever since my biological mom gave up her parental rights right after I was born. My mom never wanted to be a part of my life. She wasn't married to my dad, so when she left, it was pretty easy for her. My father stepped up and raised me alone, never once questioning it. He did his best, and I was grateful for that. When he started dating my stepmom, I was still just a kid, and they got married after 3 years. By then, I had already figured out she didn't really want to be a mom to me. She was my dad's wife, nothing more. As a child, we didn't connect much. She usually kept her distance. And as I got older, things only got worse. We argued a lot, even over silly things, and she'd blow everything out of proportion. Then she'd run to my dad complaining about how awful I was, and he'd always take her side. That was the most frustrating part. She'd start the fights, but I was the one getting blamed. Our relationship was rocky already, but I kept reminding myself that college was just a few months away. I was ready to move out and start fresh. But then the accident happened, and everything got turned upside down. Instead of getting better, I ended up moving in with my grandparents because my dad didn't want me around anymore. And it wasn't about money either. My dad owns a paper company and does pretty well for himself. We had full medical coverage, and the car was insured, too. So financially, there was no reason to throw me out. It all came down to the story my stepmom spun. She made up this ridiculous tale about how I was planning to hang out with friends and that I'd taken the car behind her back just to look cool. She told him she overheard me talking about it, and apparently, she even claimed she told me not to do it, but that I ignored her and went anyway. All this happened while I was still recovering, barely able to move, in constant pain. And on top of that, I had to deal with my stepmom spreading lies and poisoning my dad against me. For a whole week, we went back and forth, arguing over what really happened. Eventually, I just snapped. I lost my temper and yelled at her. I called her out for being a liar and told her she was just jealous because she couldn't have my father all to herself. I told her she was sick for making up stuff about me, especially when I was in no shape to defend myself. That was the final straw for my dad. Not long after, he packed me up and sent me to live with my grandparents. Thankfully, they were kind enough to take me in, but the pain of being kicked out, especially while I was so vulnerable, stung in a way I can't even fully describe. I told my dad that by choosing her over me, he'd changed how I would see him forever. He just told me I needed to learn some discipline and that he couldn't keep hurting his wife just because I didn't know how to behave. At that point, it became crystal clear that he'd picked his side. He believed her version of events and didn't trust me, his own child. That broke my heart. After everything we'd been through, just me and him all those years, I thought our bond was stronger than that. I'd never really considered my stepmom to be part of the family. Sure, she was around, but in my head, she was never truly one of us. And now I knew she never thought of me as family either. So I made a tough decision. I cut them both off. I decided I wasn't going to speak to either of them again. That word family started to feel meaningless to me, because it comes with responsibility, love, and loyalty, and they had shown me none of that. I still respect my dad for raising me on his own when I was little, but in the end, he chose her over me. That says everything I need to know. After I moved in with my grandparents, they really stepped up. They hired a full-time nurse to help take care of me, and they were gentle and kind. I'd always had a good relationship with them, and honestly, the only reason I hadn't gone to live with them earlier was because I thought my dad had my back. The only reason I hadn't completely cut my dad off sooner was because somewhere deep down I still held on to a little hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd come around one day. But he never did. Tough luck for me, I guess. Thankfully, my grandparents were wonderful. They really stepped up when I needed someone the most. They understood that I was going through one of the lowest points in my life, and they made sure I felt safe, loved, and cared for. They even tried reaching out to my father, encouraging him to visit me, but he always had some excuse ready. One day he was swamped with work, the next he was too tired. Whatever the reason, he managed to avoid seeing me completely. 2 whole months went by after the accident and after he kicked me out, and he never showed up. Not even once. Eventually, my grandparents got fed up with his behavior. They confronted him and told him flat out that what he was doing to me wasn't right. That's when he finally admitted something that stung more than I expected. He had no plans to patch things up with me anytime soon. Apparently, my stepmom had made up her mind that she didn't want me in their lives anymore, and she'd given him an ultimatum, her or me. And he picked her. He told them he thought I needed to learn how to be a better person, that I wasn't good at getting along with people, and until I grew up, he didn't see us having any kind of relationship. According to him, I'd become too difficult to deal with, and he just didn't want that kind of stress for his sake or hers. And that was that. Since then, we haven't spoken. It was my grandparents who ended up sending me to college once I was well enough to go. They've supported me through everything. It's been 2 years now, and I'm set to graduate next year. I've been trying to move forward with my life. It's been hard, don't get me wrong, but having solid friends and loving grandparents makes it a little more manageable. Up until recently, I hadn't heard a single word from my father or stepmom. Honestly, I didn't care to. I had no intention of stirring up the past or getting revenge. I was doing just fine on my own without them. But clearly, my stepmom has some serious issues, because out of nowhere, she reached out to me last week. She told me that she and my dad were planning to renew their wedding vows in a couple of weeks and wanted me to be there. I was stunned. I had no idea why she would want me at that event. So, I wrote back right away and told her I wasn't coming. But she didn't take no for an answer. She replied saying I had to attend, because my dad was going to formally invite me in the next couple of days. Turns out, the real reason they wanted me there wasn't about reconciliation or family, it was business. Some of my dad's business associates were going to be at the event, and since they'd seen photos of me on his desk, they knew he had a daughter. My absence would raise questions, and my dad didn't want to deal with that. According to her, he'd been planning to reach out to make amends anyway, so I should just accept the invitation and let the past go. But I wasn't ready to let the past go. Not even close. 2 years may have passed, but that pain is still fresh. I'll never forget how he made me feel back then. I ignored her message and went about my day. But of course, a few hours later, she texted again, this time nastier than before. She called me an ungrateful brat who didn't know how to behave, and she accused me of trying to stoop even lower by rejecting my dad's attempt to make things right. Then she went a step further, she threatened me. She said I could either show up, or I could forget about ever inheriting a single cent from my father's business or wealth. And she made it clear that she'd personally make sure of that. That was the final straw for me. I'd had enough. Before then, I'd only blocked them on social media. I didn't think blocking their numbers was necessary. But after that message, I blocked both of them completely. Phone, text, everything. I thought that would be the end of it. Unfortunately, it wasn't. A couple of days later, I got an email from her. She was still pushing the same narrative that I had to be there because this vow renewal was tied to my dad's business, and he was desperate for me to show up. But even when she was the one needing something from me, she still couldn't manage to be kind or respectful. She tried to pressure me again, guilt-tripping and threatening like before. And that's when I finally decided I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I wrote a long post online, laid everything out, and attached screenshots of our conversations to back it all up. I talked about what had happened to me 2 years ago, how they treated me, and how she was still trying to manipulate me even now. I made it public, tagged both of them in the post, and even tagged a few of my dad's business associates, people whose names and profiles I recognized. I did that on purpose. She had made it clear this whole vow renewal was just as much a business event as a personal one, so I figured his work friends deserved to know the truth too. I didn't expect much to come of it, honestly, I just wanted to get it off my chest. But the very next day, my grandparents told me that my dad was devastated. Apparently, the post caused major fallout. He had been in early talks about merging his company with another office supplies business, and now the deal might be off the table completely. Word spread quickly, and since I'd tagged a few key people, the story reached them. And well, my dad didn't exactly come out looking like a great guy in the post. So now, because of that post I made, the merger my dad was working on is pretty much up in the air. He hasn't been able to get a response from anyone on the other side, and he's convinced that it's all because of what I shared online. My grandparents, while they've always supported me, told me they weren't sure if I should have dragged my dad into the mess publicly. They pointed out that it was mostly my stepmom who had gone out of her way to be cruel to me, not him. And now that things have settled a bit, I'm starting to feel a little guilty about it too. I didn't post what I did to ruin his work, I just snapped. Update 1A. Hey, so it's been a few days since I posted everything, and I ended up deleting the post where I called out my dad and stepmom. Also, a few people asked me why I kept referring to them as my parents, even though it's clear we don't exactly have a loving relationship. Well, my dad is my biological father, so there's that. And even though I'm not close to my stepmom and honestly don't care for her, she's been around since I was a little kid. I guess I just got used to calling them both my parents over the years. It's not that deep, really, it just feels like the easiest way to say it. Anyway, back to the point, I took the post down and unblocked my dad's number. I wanted to at least send him a message. Most people in the comments told me I didn't owe anyone an apology, and maybe they're right. But still, I felt like I should explain myself. I had no idea about the merger, or that it was such a big deal. That wasn't my intention at all. I didn't exactly say I'm sorry, but I did try to explain why I reacted the way I did. I told him that everything from 2 years ago still sits heavy on my chest. And when I found out he was going to invite me not because he wanted to make peace, but because he needed to save face in front of his colleagues, it just hit a nerve. And with the way my stepmom had been treating me lately, I honestly snapped. That's why I made the post. So I laid it all out in a long text and sent it to him. I wasn't expecting a response. Honestly, I figured he'd be furious and either ignore me or chew me out. But instead, he wrote back and said, "It's okay. I probably deserved it after everything that happened. I don't blame you." I didn't even know what to make of that. It threw me off. So I talked to my grandparents about it, hoping they might have some insight. Turns out, they had already spoken to him a few days earlier, before I even messaged him. They said he's been carrying a lot of guilt for a while now. Kicking me out was his choice, but he told them he had been overwhelmed and confused. My stepmom had always been so convincing when she complained about my behavior, and he'd believed her without question. But not long after I left, he started having doubts about her version of the story. The problem was, he never found the courage to reach out and make things right. He just kind of let time pass, hoping it would get easier. It didn't. Apparently, he did genuinely want to invite me to their vow renewal, and not for show. According to my grandparents, his business associates weren't even on the guest list. It was supposed to be a small, private event. So that whole story my stepmom fed me about impressing his colleagues? That was her own spin. My guess is, she just wanted to stir the pot and drive a bigger wedge between us. I never really understood why she does the things she does. Anyway, my dad saw all the screenshots I posted and realized just how far her lying had gone. Things between them aren't great right now, either. As for the merger, he still hasn't heard back from anyone, but he's bracing himself for bad news. He figures he'll get some kind of official word soon. Right now, though, his focus is on dealing with his personal life falling apart. After hearing all that from my grandparents, I honestly don't know what to feel. They told me they were proud of me not for apologizing, because they don't think I needed to, but for at least being willing to reach out. They said a lot of people in my position wouldn't have even done that, and they respected that I took the first step. Still, I feel conflicted. These past 2 years, as painful as they were, became something I got used to. Not talking to my dad made it easier to deal with my feelings, to build a wall around myself and move on. But now that the wall's starting to come down, I'm left with all this uncertainty about where things really stand between us. Update 2. Hey again. So after my last update, a bunch of people messaged me saying I should go back to no contact with my dad and that trying to rebuild anything with him is pointless. But honestly, I don't think I can do that. I already broke the no contact rule when I reached out after the post, and at this point, I can't just flip the switch and pretend like none of that happened. There are still so many things we've never talked about, so much left unresolved. I'm not saying I want to fully reconcile right away, but I don't think I'll ever get true closure if I don't at least sit down and have one real conversation with him. Maybe after that, I can decide where we really stand. Maybe after we talk, I'll have more clarity. But until that conversation actually happens, I don't think going no contact again is even something I can realistically consider. Call me weak, call me naive, I don't really care. I know what I feel in my heart, and I trust myself to make the right call for my own peace of mind. I've got this. I ended up talking to my grandparents about everything I'd been feeling. I told them I thought it might be a good idea for me and my dad to finally sit down and have a real conversation. They agreed. They actually thought it would be a positive step for both of us and said they'd help arrange it. From what they've been telling me, things between my dad and my stepmom aren't going great right now. In fact, there's talk that they might be heading for a divorce. Nothing confirmed yet, but the irony isn't lost on me. Just weeks ago they were planning to renew their vows, and now it looks like they might be splitting up. Life's got a strange sense of humor sometimes. Anyway, back to what my grandparents said. They'd been in touch with my dad regularly. They're also trying to rebuild their own relationship with him. Unlike me, they don't have the luxury of time. They're older, and they just want to make the most of whatever time they have left. I can't blame them for that. And it sounds like my dad has really been wrecked over everything that happened. According to my grandparents, he hasn't even been that concerned about the business stuff lately. The merger might have fallen through, but he barely talks about that. All he seems to focus on is how badly he messed up as a father. He's been saying he failed me, and I guess, from his perspective, he probably did. Truthfully, I never tried to understand what things looked like from his side. But now I'm starting to. My grandparents said they'd talk to him again and let me know when we could meet. I just hoped it would go well. Update 3, hey. So, 2 days ago, I finally met my dad for the first time in over 2 years. We met at my grandparents' house, and honestly, it was emotional in a way I wasn't expecting. Sitting across from him, being able to say the things I've been holding inside for so long and hearing what he had to say, it was a lot. He started by apologizing. Right away. He said he knew he'd failed me and that he didn't even feel like he deserved to be sitting in the same room as me. He said I'd grown into a better person than he ever imagined, and that he had no part in it. I don't actually agree with that. I mean, sure, things went south later, especially after my stepmom twisted everything, but when I was younger, it was him who raised me. He did that on his own, and he was a good father back then. Things just changed as I got older and my stepmom started coming between us. Still, he owned up to his mistakes. He admitted that the worst thing he did was believing my stepmom over me. He said he just assumed she was telling the truth because she was older, and he never thought she'd lie. He said when it was just the two of them, she had a way of manipulating him like she could make anything sound reasonable. And honestly, that part checks out. She always was a smooth talker. He said that even when he started doubting her version of events, he didn't have the courage to come to me and face what he'd done. That's why he never reached out, because he didn't know how to handle the shame. He told me that the apology came from the bottom of his heart, but what I chose to do with it was completely up to me. If I wanted to walk away again, he said he'd understand. He knew he didn't have a right to ask for forgiveness, but he hoped I might give it some thought. I also found out that he and my stepmom really are getting divorced. Apparently, after he saw the screenshots of the messages she sent me, he confronted her. When he asked her about why she lied to me about the vow renewal invitation, she ended up admitting to everything, including lying 2 years ago about the car accident and why I had been driving that day. After that, there was no going back. He asked her to leave, and she's already moved out. He's filed for divorce. When we finished talking, I told him I needed time. I couldn't make a decision on the spot. And honestly, that's where I am right now, still thinking it through. A lot of people might say I should walk away and never look back. But at the end of the day, this is my decision. He's still my father. And even though things have been awful for the past few years, I can't just erase everything he ever did right. I'm also not a kid anymore. I'm not dependent on him, and he doesn't need anything from me. I'm finishing college soon, and I'll be supporting myself, so this isn't about money or retirement or needing a backup plan. Even after the hit to his reputation, his business is still holding up just fine. The numbers haven't dropped, so if we rebuild anything, it won't be out of obligation, it'll be purely emotional. Just a father and a daughter trying to make something work. And I think I want to try. I'm leaning toward giving him a second chance, not because I'm weak, but because deep down, I still care. He's the only real parent I've ever known. That has to count for something. So yeah, I'm not completely sure yet, but I want to be. That's why I'm sharing all this, to hear different perspectives, maybe get some clarity. I really want to give this a shot. I want a chance at having something that feels like a real family, even if it's just him and me. And I only get one chance to do this right. Update 4. So I've made my decision, I'm going to try. My dad and I are starting therapy together next week. We're taking baby steps, just trying to build a better relationship one conversation at a time. My grandparents are thrilled about it, and honestly, I'm feeling hopeful for the first time in a long while. I'm ready to let go of what's behind us and try to build something better moving forward. Whatever happens next, at least I'll know I gave it an honest chance.